Ready? Oh, okay. He's pointing at me. So, all right. Well, we're going to continue on. This is part 10 of Yechezeqel. This is kind of the gears start to change a little bit in this particular lesson, and we'll find as we're going to switch from focusing on things that we need to change or adjustments that we can make. This is kind of like the breaking point to where the next, or the balance of this chapter 1 is going to start dealing with perception and how we see. But in this particular lesson, it's going to deal with a review, and it's going to deal with taking a look at part of chapter 2 that we haven't considered, but it's going to help us to understand why we're going through everything that we're going through in this first chapter. So let's talk to our Elohim, and then we'll take a look at something that I found interesting. Hopefully you will too. So, Master Yahuwah, we thank you for this opportunity to study your word. We ask today that you will open our eyes, open our ears, and open our hearts so that we can see, hear, and understand what your word has to tell us. And we thank you for it in the name of Yahshua. Amen. All right. So, in our study of the first chapter of Yechezeqel, we've developed some concepts and ideas. And like I said, I want to take a second to consider the first 4 verses out of chapter 2 of Yechezeqel. That's kind of going to give us a better understanding as to the why of chapter 1. We're learning a lot of little bitty tidbits to make adjustments to our life. So this is going to kind of give us an indication as to why these adjustments are necessary. And we begin in Yechezeqel chapter 2 verse 1 that Yechezeqel's talking, and so this is Yahuwah talking to him. He says, "And he said unto me, Son of man, stand upon your feet, and I will speak unto you. And the Spirit entered into me when he spoke unto me, and he set me upon my feet, so that I heard him that spoke unto me. And he said unto me, Son of man, I send you to the children of Israel, to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed against me, even unto this very day. For they are an impudent children, and stiff-hearted. I do send you unto them, and you shall say unto them, Thus says the sovereign Yahuwah." So we see that he's being sent to the children of Israel. And we can say that we're being sent to people that are much in the same boat as the children of Israel were in. He says that they are a stiff-necked people, and they're impudent. Impudent is a word that's used to describe they're rebellious. They knock what has been established. They rebel against it. They're obstinate. They're rude is what it means. So in these verses, we can clearly see topically why the adjustments by and through the concepts and ideas that we've been discovering in the first chapter are so important for us to understand. In these 4 verses in Yechezeqel chapter 2, we find out that Yahuwah Elohim speaks to us, his Spirit enters into us, his Spirit stands us on our feet, and we are able to hear him. And we find that the little things that we've been studying along the way help us to make adjustments to ourselves so that we can hear him speak to us, that we perceive that he's present, that we can allow him to stand us up. And in fact, in the first part of this, he says, Elohim tells Yechezeqel, stand upon your feet. So it gives us strength to be able to do it on our own if we need to. So it's a very important thing what we're going through in this first chapter. So in these things, we are sent forward to minister to those who still cannot see or hear as well as to those who are struggling in their relationship with not only Elohim, but with life itself. So with all this in mind, we can go back to Yechezeqel chapter 1 and verse 12 that says, "As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like coals of fire, burning like the appearance of torches. It flashed up and down among the living creatures, and there was brightness to the fire, and out of the fire went forth lightning." So here we are with living creatures again. And let's take a look a little deeper into this particular verse. Based on what we've learned in our previous studies, we could reconstruct the first phrase of this verse that says, "As for the likeness of the living creatures," to say, "As for our model of or relation to life." We say the word demut, that means likeness, actually means a model of something. It means something that is a similitude to. It means something that's related to something. So what is this that we're looking at? We have to retrace our steps to consider some of the concepts and ideas that we've discussed in order to better understand what our model of or our relation to life is. So I took and I crunched together a summary of everything that we've discussed. And this is, hopefully it's a lot less wordy than it has been in the past, but it gives us an opportunity after a few days of not thinking about it to go back and look at it, and then take a look at this chapter, or this verse number 12 in Yechezeqel, to see how everything applies. So we said, we start with, Yahshua said that we must worship in spirit and in truth, and we must be able to recognize the spiritual meaning that is described, that for us as physical beings can only be described in physical, concrete terms. And this idea is what actually started this whole study in the first place. The question was, if Yahweh Elohim is everywhere, and he surrounds us, and he's always in our presence, then why is there a need for a throne, and why the description of a chariot? So we describe things in concrete terms, but we have to be able to, I guess, break away from that in order to worship in spirit and in truth, because Yahshua said that's what the Father is looking for. So it's a very important thing. The throne of Yahweh Elohim is always present. It is up to us, however, to be able to perceive it. Now, our existence, past, present, and future, is found in and depends on Yahuwah, who is our Elohim. In our lifetime, we will experience change, some positive and some negative. We will grow in Yahuwah, or we will shrink or halt growth. We might even fall away. And this is something we've mentioned this a number of times, but it's really something that we need to pay attention to, because our relationship and our walk with Elohim is a constantly, for lack of a better word, evolving relationship, that only through our continuing to study, our continuing to pray, our continuing to seek Elohim, will our relationship move forward. And we said that the reason for this chariot is for forward motion, right? So that's a very important thing. The choice is and always will be ours to make, that we can yoke ourselves to Elohim through his word and receive his protection, nourishment, and rest within the walls of his tent, or we can remain outside the tent wall, yielding to transgression until it becomes sin, which is ourself separated from Yahweh Elohim, and thus in a situation where the light is absent. Now, this is something else that we need to grasp. We all transgress. We're human. That's what we do. But we catch ourselves and we make teshuvah. And as we make teshuvah, we stop this particular transgression until it's finally out of our life. But to not stop the transgression moves on and it becomes sin, because at this point our mind changes to see it as something that's normal. And this is what we call moving towards a reprobate mind. So that's also a very important thing. If we will consider that if he will not leave us and is always present, then we have to realize that it is us who leave him, or we fail to perceive him as being present. The throne of Yahweh Elohim, his power and his authority, is always present. It is up to us, however, to be able to perceive it. And again, why did Isha fall to the enticements of the Satan? It's because Ish wasn't present. It takes our physical acts of worship in order for us to stay in the presence of Elohim, because our spirit is able to perceive him so much easier if we will take the time to close ourselves off in the closet, like Yahshua said, and take the time to pray or to study. So it's a very important thing, and this is telling us the whole way through that it's up to us. It's our choice. So we need to humble ourselves before Elohim and be willing to shed any exterior pride that we might be wearing in order to receive the instruction and guidance that we need to bring us out of captivity and renew, repair, and restore us. We must heed closely something greater and more important than ourselves, the power and the authority of Yahweh Elohim, and ascend to it, and once again be established by and in Yahuwah. Now, we also mentioned a couple of studies ago that in order to do this, it requires our ability to be able to love our neighbor as ourselves. In Philippians, Paul goes on to say that we actually even had to regard the needs of others before we regard the needs of ourselves. It's hard for us to do that sometimes. It goes back to the whole we're human being things, but that we have to be able to perceive something greater than ourselves, and we are able to do that by loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. So, the power, This is the only way to bring positive change in our lifetime. If Yahuwah is spirit and is always present, yet hidden from our perception, he can come out of hiding and enter into us when we need to be driven by the Spirit. We must be able to recognize and make a distinction between Yahshua as the concept and Yahshua as the Son of Man, and then pay attention to them both. One is the door found in the living water of Yahuwah, while the other opened the door as the vehicle of sacrifice by the shedding of the blood to redeem and to restore the covenant between Yahweh Elohim and humankind. This is Yahweh Elohim's plan for redemption and restoration, in which they, humankind, both male and female, and this is a problem that we see in our mainstream religions, is that they're very chauvinistic. The Torah, the scriptures, are not chauvinistic. Everything here relates to both men and women. Our relationship with Elohim is no respecter of persons. So that's a very important thing to understand, that both male and female can move forward and upward towards the throne of Yahweh Elohim. Life is attached to this in this manner, on these conditions and on account of this. Yahshua as a concept is what came out of the mist and was a model of the doorway to the blood and the water that brings redemption, deliverance from sin and death, and restoration as Yahshua, the Son of Man, that separated the wrath and the judgment of Yahweh Elohim by the shedding of his blood as the vehicle of sacrifice, bringing forth undeserved favor from the mist. Through the door we are in the presence and in the direction of, or towards unity with the Spirit of Yahweh Elohim. When humankind comes to the door of the Torah, the Yahshua of Elohim, we remember that the Torah in Tanakh is also called Yahshua. It's called Yahshua. It's called Yasha. So it's called deliverance. It's called redemption. It's called restoration. That they move in the direction of or towards unity with the blessing of the Spirit of Yahweh because we are covered by the covenant made possible by Yahshua as a vehicle of sacrifice. Now, we discussed also that we can be wise as serpents and have the power to tread on serpents, and as such we will be able to circumvent or maneuver shrewdly around the deception of the Satan and rightly divide the word of truth by perceiving what divides us from or sets us apart to the house of Yahweh, who is our Elohim. So we will be able to perceive what causes us to be divided from the house of Elohim and what actually sets us apart to the house of Elohim. But it's only through our understanding of the word and our application of the word that we can do this. Let's see. We are to walk straight, upright, correct, according to the pace of the truth of Yahweh's power and ability to redeem, deliver, and restore. To walk according to the pace of his blessing is to do so out of love, not an expectation of something. And we use the example of the sacrifice of consecration, or the sacrifice of consecration, where the bull was offered totally. It was a voluntary offering. The bull would be totally and completely burned up. The one offering the bull would receive nothing in return. And this is what our offering is, that we offer strictly out of love, not expecting anything in return. To walk according to the pace of his blessing is to do so out of love, not expecting something. When we are in captivity, we are in bondage, or even if we are not, we must be willing to give everything that we have to Yahweh, our Master and our Elohim, and expect nothing in return. It's a lot of stuff from just a few verses in Ezekiel, but we see that when we dig into these verses, we get a lot of information that helps us to prepare ourselves in our walk through our day-to-day. We are willing to give to one another, or are we willing to give to one another in the same way? Our strength depends on our ability to reach for or through the door, and our being in subjection to it according to and on account of our perception of its instruction and guidance. Only then can we enter into the garden and be surrounded by it, coming under the blessings of Yahweh, our Elohim, through Yahshua. We have a choice to turn away from the presence of Yahweh, or we can make teshuvah and come into the presence of Yahweh, to acknowledge his presence surrounding us. In this, it is our choice to reach for the tzitzit and learn from, receive guidance from, and be blessed by the wings, the instruction of Yahweh Elohim, being in fellowship with, or in the Spirit, moving in the direction of, or into the instruction and the guidance of Yahweh Elohim, that connects us intimately to him as his beloved. Not turning from the direction of the instruction of Yahweh in our walk and in our way of life, as well as in our study, our prayer, and our praise. And that's kind of an important thing as well, because most of us here, probably everybody here, looks at a whole bunch of different input, and we're constantly coming across something. And there are things that sound really good. But the question is, and that we really have to ask, is does it line up with Torah? Because if it doesn't line up with Torah, then it has to be questionable. And we have to start looking at that. Because once we start to stray from the instruction of Elohim, then we start to actually fail to perceive him being present. So, okay, we cross over physically from one way of life to another, and we cross over from the physical into the spiritual. We enter into the realm of and into the presence of Yahweh Elohim. In this we walk when we rise up and when we lie down in life and in death. The door in the wall is perceived by what surrounds the door. If we remember, we took a look at Mark, and in the story, that story where Yahshua was in Capernaum, and they brought the paralytic carried by four. So it's a very important thing that we have to be able to perceive the door and not be afraid of what's in front of the door. Otherwise, we're going to be carried by our spiritual poverty, and we're going to be in a state of paralysis. We are created with the capacity to think and to imagine just as Elohim thinks and imagines. The Adam was blessed, and as such was to be and still today can be fruitful and multiply. We said not necessarily in a sense of procreation, but rather in the sense of growing spiritually in a relationship with Elohim and in the realm of humankind. We are created to be greater than fear, anxiety, dread, and depression. We are created to be greater than the darkness. It is our perception of the light that can lead us out of the night from the evening into the morning. We have the ability to have dominion over our choices. We have free will. We are both physical and spiritual beings, as Yahweh Elohim took the physical earth to create our physical side and then blew into our nostrils the spiritual side. The Adam, that's you and I, was created for a purpose designed by Yahweh Elohim. We have a choice that we can gather our emotional state into the presence of Yahweh Elohim and be strengthened by him, or we can allow ourselves to suffer the violent emotions of the flesh. And we discussed that if we let our emotions go out of control, that it can actually make us sick. When we make decisions based on our messed up emotions, we will make the wrong decisions because we make them based on the emotion instead of based on the empirical facts that we have to have in order to make good decisions. Okay? We can make teshuvah when we lose focus on being gathered to Yahweh Elohim and fall to the violent emotions of the flesh. We can journey or travel with Elohim, or we can again yield to the deception of the Satan and choose the carnal path in our existence. We can choose to be empowered by a relationship with Yahweh Elohim that says, I can do all things through Mashiach that gives me strength. When we are weak, Yahweh is our strength, or we can eat the dead things offered to us by the Satan, and as a result come under the judgment of the left hand. We can choose to be what we were created to be, or we can become something that we were never supposed to be. We were not created to be in a state of spiritual poverty. We were created to have dominion over it. Our actions and our worship affect the actions and the potential worship of others. We instruct, teach, and guide others by what we do and what we say and in our relationship with Yahweh Elohim. We said that at times we're going to be the only Bible that some people will ever read. So it's very important that if we are going to walk according to the Word, that we also act according to the way we're talking. We must be conscious of whether we are acting like Cain or acting like Abel. We remember that Cain brought a so-so offering, but Abel went out of his way to make sure that he brought the right thing. And actually, even though the Torah wasn't given, Abel brought an offering according to the Torah. If we go to Vayikra, we're going to find that his offering was along those lines. So we must look at to see if it is our house that needs to be changed or altered. We are covered and protected by the throne, the power and the authority of Yahweh Elohim. We rise up to grow and to triumph through the Aleph and the Tav, that is the word of Yahweh, who is Yahshua. It's a lot of stuff. And that's just what we gathered from verses 1 through 11 in the first chapter of Yechezeqel. But it's a lot of stuff that teaches us we need to pay attention to this area of our life or to this area of our life, and where am I here? Because we make adjustments. Like it said, we rearrange the furniture in the house to make sure that everything's the way it should be. So having reviewed this, we can now look at the phrase, their appearance was like coals of fire, and then we'll take a look at burning like the appearance of torches. Now the word for appearance in this phrase is marechem, that's rooted in mare, that means appearance, but primarily means sight, as in what is seen or what appears to be seen. And that's a very important thing. What we see or what we think we see. Okay? The word finds its root in ra'ah, that means to perceive, to consider, and to discern or distinguish. And only in this way will we know the difference in what we see and what we think we see. What we are perceiving are the coals of fire. The word for coals of fire is kegacha le'esh. Now, kegachele means coal, but it is a descriptive word that literally means to light the coals. It means to kindle and comes from an unused word or unused root that means to glow. Now, in the Proto-Hebrew of this, if you take a look at the Proto-Hebrew there, we see the lamed, that is the shepherd's goad. We see the het, that is a picture of the wall, and then we see the gimel, that in this case is a stick that's used to support something. In our Hebrew script, we get the letters that we've assigned the meanings to, but we get an idea of how we kindle a glow or how we light the coals or not, as both illustrate to us that there's a wall. Remember, the het means a wall that stands between stability and instruction in the Proto-Hebrew. And then in the Hebrew script, we see that it stands between the stability and the blessings and the instruction and the power found in the truth of Yahweh from the Hebrew script. So in this, we're starting to get an idea that something that stands in the way, if we allow it to stand in the way, our perception of what do we see or what do we think we see, we have to be able to perceive. We have to be able to discern. We have to be able to distinguish the difference, and then we have to be able to make a decision based on what we have learned. Now, het can also mean a gate. It can mean a gate in the wall, and as such adds the element of choice to this concept. What we see or what we think we see, that it can be a wall that separates instruction and stability and blessing, or it can be a gate that allows us to pass from the instruction to the blessing. But again, it's how do we see it? How do we perceive it? And it requires us being able to perceive it, discern it, distinguish, and then understand. So again, it's choice. How do we learn to discern? How do we learn to understand? Well, we said that there were 3 levels in the ark with Noah: the lower level, the middle level, and the upper level. And when we studied this, we said that the lower level was knowledge. The second level was wisdom, and the third level led to understanding. But when you're at the third level, you can see the window where the light comes in. So we've also said that if we don't have the beginning, the middle, and the end, we don't have the truth, which is emet, is aleph, mem, and tav. So it's very important that we take a look at everything before we make a decision on anything. So this concept is applicable in Yechezeqel 2, verses 3 and 4, that says, "And he said unto me, Son of man, I send you to the children of Israel, a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed against me, even unto this very day. For they are impudent children and stiff-hearted. I do send you unto them, And you shall say unto them, thus says the sovereign Yahuwah. And then he goes on to begin to give the message to give them. But we take a look at what we've just considered and apply it to these verses, that we have to understand before we can go to someone who is dead set